As you can tell by the title of this video, normally I would do 5 things that each game did best. However, unfortunately, I was only able to come up with 4 things that Batman Arkham Knight did best. But I want to clarify something, right? When I say did best, I kind of want it to be stuff that's like undoubtedly the best out of anything in the entire franchise. That doesn't mean that Batman Arkham Knight is objectively the worst game. There are other things it did extremely well. For example, the story. Even though it's not the best story, I think it's decent enough. The side missions are decent enough. You know, there's some good playable DLC. Like, there are a lot of good things about Batman Arkham Knight. But the things that they did best are very specific to this game that no other game really holds any sort of title to. And I want to make sure that I don't just throw stuff in there to make it 5 things it did best. I want to make sure it's the best top tier quality content, and I want to be actually honest and genuine with you guys. So today's video is going to be 4 things that Batman Arkham Knight did best. And I honestly think that you guys probably know that this is going to go in a very specific direction, just because of the fact that this game focused on one thing specifically, and that's going to be some of what makes up this list. It all kind of ties together in some sort of way, but without wasting your time, let's get into this. The first thing that this game did best, and I don't even think I need to mention it, it kind of just goes without saying, but that's the combat and the stealth, right? I mean, let's just be honest, everything about combat and stealth in this game are 100% better than Batman Arkham Origins, City, Asylum, everything combined, right? Batman just moves better. There's more move options. You can pick up weapons in this game finally. You know, there's even like, you know, people call it tank combat, but there's additional combat to this game that we haven't had in previous games. And I think that's something that people do really need to consider. But that's another point for later in the video. The overall stealth, there's more gadget use than ever. You know, you can manipulate your enemies to go to certain locations. The disruptor works better than ever. There's a lot of ways that you can take down your opponent in this game, as well as there are tougher enemies, right? Because I think there's a counterpoint that certain people make, like the Under the Mayo video, where he claimed that it was kind of too easy almost. The combat kind of almost felt too easy compared to Batman Arkham City, which he felt was much more difficult. However, I would counter-argue, saying that the enemies in Batman Arkham Knight are also more difficult to deal with to begin with. I understand what he means, because Batman is a bit overpowered, but I think as you get through the game, and you're playing on the hardest difficulty, the enemies do get a lot more tricky in themselves. So I think it does kind of balance itself out. And if you talk about something like stealth, you know, they add different types of enemies, like you can't go into detective mode for too long. They brought in minigunners. You know, they've brought in a variety of different things into this game that make it much more difficult to do stealth, but you also have something like the Fear Multi-Takedown, which is a bit too OP. We could have done without that. But besides that, I honestly think that the combat was done very, very well in this game. Probably, absolutely, the best Batman combat we've ever seen in a video game ever. The second thing kind of sounds like a cop-out, but honestly, I just also wanted to give it its fair due, because I think it's become a very common theme to trash on this thing, but I think we should also look at some of the bright spots that this thing had in this game. And that's the Batmobile, right? And even though this is the only game where you can use the Batmobile, can I just say, obviously that makes it the best done by default. So yes, it's a cop-out. However, I also just wanted to kind of talk about the actual Batmobile itself, because while it did get thrown into certain places where it kind of just felt a bit unnecessary, mostly in the main campaign story, side missions are a bit of a different thing. Riddler trophies, I didn't have too much of an issue with it. It was mostly the campaign. But the actual way that the Batmobile is used, it drives very, very well in this game. You know, having to, you know, you're able to track tire tracks in it. I actually thought that was actually a pretty cool concept overall. The actual Batmobile combat itself, when you're fighting the unmanned drones, everything about that is perfectly fine, with the exception of the Cobra tanks. I will admit that one was pretty bad. It was pretty awful overall. But to be honest, the Batmobile itself, it actually does function extremely well, and it drives very smoothly, right? And obviously it's a tank, it runs through everything. And you can't tell me that running over some poles sometimes, or running over cement blocks, wasn't just one of the most satisfying things to do, or how you can hit the thugs in the streets and it would give them a little electric shock so we didn't kill them. I thought it was a very nice touch of the game overall. And like I said, I do think that the actual combat is a lot of fun. And I think it gets a lot of hate just because of how it was used. But I think the actual gameplay of the Batmobile itself, if you take a step back and actually look at the gameplay, I think was absolutely phenomenal. The third thing that I think this game did best, I don't know if it's considered controversial or not, because it could be between this and Batman Arkham Origins, depending on how you look at it. But I think this one is the best by far, no exceptions, and that's the Traversal, right? And the only thing is, a lot of people might say that Arkham Origins was better because you were able to fast travel, right? You didn't have to wait and glide across the entire frickin' map in order to get there. But I actually think that's a negative thing. If your map is too big to where you can't glide across the entire thing in a decent amount of time, then I think that just goes to show the developers made the map a bit too big, right? And Batman Arkham Knight did have a pretty decently good sized map overall, right? I wouldn't say it's probably similar size to Arkham Origins, but I think it's a little bit smaller, but I could be wrong. I'd have to actually look at the maps. However, the actual grapnel boost itself was like, what, 5 times faster or something like that than in the previous games, right? The improvements were absolutely drastic. You were able to get from one side of the map to the other in a minute or two, whereas in Arkham Origins, it would take quite a while. So I don't really think there's too much of a debate there, and if at any point you don't really want to glide, for whatever reason, if there's a lot of armed thugs up in the sky or there's drones up there and you don't want to get shot, well, you can use the Batmobile. And I just went through the reasons why I think the Batmobile was actually done really well in the game, the things it did do very well gameplay-wise. And the actual traversal of using the Batmobile is another quick and convenient way to get around. And again, it doesn't take too long. It doesn't require some type of fast travel. And I think that's something that Batman Arkham Knight did exceptionally well, is the overall traversal in this game. The fourth and final thing this game did absolutely best was the graphics, right? I don't think that's much of a controversial take. Like, the other games do have good graphics that even hold up today, but when you look at Batman Arkham Knight, I could probably convince someone who's never seen this game before that it's come out within the past 2 years. It looks absolutely phenomenal, right? Everything about this game looks absolutely beautiful, right? Just start off with, like, something simple, like the character models in this game, right? Batman looks amazing. You know, Oracle, Alfred, Robin, Jim Gordon, they're all making massive improvements compared to the previous games, especially someone like Jim Gordon. Because remember how he looked in Arkham City and Arkham Asylum? He looked like an old man who was on his deathbed. But in this game, Jim Gordon looks like somebody who looks somewhat physically capable. He actually looks like a real human being. And I really think that the game did a really good job with that. But it's not just that, right? It's also the way that the buildings look. It's the way that the rainfall is. And the rainfall, or the snow, or depending on which game you're in, has always been very good. However, I think that this game took that kind of a step up. And I think that with Batman's actual suit, the wet physics, I guess you can call it, like the look on Batman's suit when it's wet, looks even better than ever. And it looked phenomenal before, right? I just want to clear that up. I'm not saying it looked bad before, but now I think it looks even better with this game. This game came out 9 years ago. It'll be 10 years in, what, a few months? 9.5 years ago this game came out. And it looks absolutely freaking phenomenal. You know, and like, it kind of also ties into, like, say the actual physics of the game itself with the actual combat. It really ties in with the graphics extremely well, and I think this world was also just detailed very well from top to bottom, from the streets to the buildings to the rooftops. Everything was done so friggin' well, and I kind of have to give Rockstar, or Rocksteady, excuse me, their dues, their round of applause for this, because they did a phenomenal job. And guys, these are 4 things that I think Batman Arkham Knight did best. Let me know what you guys want to see down in the comments. Let me know what other games you guys would like me to cover. Let me know, just in general, what else you guys would like to see down below. Thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate all your support. I don't think you guys know how much it actually means to me. Make sure you guys leave a thumbs up on this video if you enjoyed, and I will see you guys in the next one. Make sure to subscribe for more content. Peace!